Welcome.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening and welcome to the Town Board of the Town of Ossining special meeting and work session for Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you could just remain standing so we could have a moment of silence for all of those that we lost in Buffalo. And I do have the names of all of those members of the Buffalo community who died in the tragedy, which I will read in a moment. Thank you. A minute, and I still don't think I have it, Victoria.
Yeah, you just.
I'll do roll call in the resolution.
Yeah, thank you.
I think you just sent me the agenda, but
I haven't sent anything yet. So.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay.
Councilwoman Feldman.
Hold on, present.
Councilman Meyer.
Present.
Councilman Minichia.
Here.
Councilwoman Fields Tuile.
Here.
Supervisor Levenberg.
I'm here.
So we're going to momentarily skip over supervisor and town board announcements and go into board resolutions. Contract Henningsen, Durham, and Richardson Architecture and Engineering PC. Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining authorizes the supervisor to sign an agreement with Henningsen, Durham, and Richardson Architecture and Engineering PC, 500 7th Avenue, New York, 10018, for the development of concept plans for the Lewis Engle Park stage improvements for a fee not to exceed $14,480, subject to approval by council to the town as to form.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So as you know, we have been talking about the DRI that the village won, and that is I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find my notes. That is something that we are hopeful. We have applied for a project within the scope of the DRI, and that is for a new stage at Lewis Engle Park. In order to finalize our request, we need concept plans to illustrate the town's vision, and we have asked HDR, the firm that is also working on the Climate Adaptive Design Studio Phase 2, to work on these concept plans so that they actually are in line with the resilient shoreline that we are working with them to develop. The village is soliciting comments on proposed projects now. Please visit their website at www.villageofossining.org to throw your comments in. And is there any discussion or any questions?
Does this include like the full architectural rendering and all of that?
No, it's concept plans. It's only
Yeah.
concept plans. Yeah, it's
So
not.
$14,000 for concept plans?
Yeah, so we the scope of work that we have with that they've proposed with HDR is it's a fee not to exceed. So that is an estimate that they've provided us of what the time that it will take for them to develop what we're going to need to put together in the DRI plan, but also potentially for other future grant opportunities where we're always going to have something to show and share that we want to propose. But the reality is that they're only going to bill us for the hours that they work. So that's something that we can monitor carefully, and we're very hopeful that this will come in under budget. But when we're looking at potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in grant funding to support this, and sort of needing this information prepared on the front end, it's unfortunately a cost that the town has to consider taking on so that we can seek the funding that we need to implement what would be a very transformative project for our park.
Right, just feels a little steep.
Well, it
But,
started,
okay,
it started out almost twice that. So
Yes, we asked them to, and it's been reviewed by Valerie Monastra, our planner, who deals in these sorts of things all the time. So, we're making sure that it's being coordinated with the CAD design studio, as the supervisor mentioned earlier. Like I said, we did have Valerie review it for her, professional feedback on it, and she felt it was a accurate scope of what we needed and a fair price.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to go back and acknowledge the, for the moment of silence, the names of the victims of the mass shooting that occurred in Buffalo on Saturday. And we are so tragically upset about this horror that has assaulted our whole country. Aaron Salter Jr., Celestine Cheney, Roberta A. Drury, Andre McNeil, Catherine Massey, Margus D. Morrison, Hayward Patterson, Geraldine Talley, Ruth Whitfield, and Pearl Young. And this tragedy brings to light the ugly truth that many of us have known for far too long, that white supremacy continues to plague our country and is the primary risk to our safety, security, and well-being across all corners of the United States. We must, at all levels of government, wholeheartedly reject racism and hate in all its forms and prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion education in schools and communities. We also need to enact common sense gun reform at a federal level and strengthen existing laws here in New York State. We cannot allow this tragedy to pass us by. Instead, we need to take meaningful action to ensure these acts of violence are prevented nationwide. For my announcements, you are all watching us, anybody who's watching us live and hasn't yet voted in the Ossining School and Library Board and budget votes, I give you permission to leave the Zoom and run on over to Ossining High School before 9 p.m. to cast your ballot. It is so important to make sure your voice is heard as part of this critical decision. And this is part of the decision-making process for entire community that happens every year this Tuesday in May. It's also National EMS Week. This week and every week, we are so grateful to our incredible Ossining Volunteer Ambulance Corps for the work that they do to keep our community healthy and safe. Last Friday, we had the opportunity to recognize OVAC at the COVID-19 Remembrance Memorial at Nelson City Park. OVAC went above and beyond the call of duty throughout the pandemic with disinfecting, testing, vaccinations, and just their day-to-day work, putting their own health at risk to save lives during very uncertain times. Thank you, Captain Nick Franzoso and your entire crew for being the best EMS professionals in the biz. Not that we're biased or anything, but Speaking of COVID, case numbers are ticking up here in Westchester County and nationwide. So please remember to test and isolate if you are not feeling well, are exposed, or test positive. Wear your masks when you're in public indoor settings. And if you haven't done so already, really, haven't you? Get vaccinated, get boosted. We will hopefully be out of the woods eventually. At last week's town board meeting, we adopted, and also the OVAC also is distributing tests. If you want to get some of those take-home tests, you can get 2 per household at OVAC. Those came, I think, from the state through the county. I know Assemblywoman Gale's office is also passing them out, and I think that Senator Rachel Melnick's office may have also given out some. So they are around, and I'm guessing, is that what you wanted to say, Councilwoman Gilles-Tuiel, something about tests? Yes? Okay, fantastic. Call her if you need some tests from Assemblywoman Gale. They have some.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you. I just wanted to also mention, yes, Assemblywoman Gale's office is also distributing rapid tests. You can just come to our office at 2 Church Street, room 203. You can always call us, 941-1111. That was it.
This Saturday, May 21st, the Ossining Historic Cemeteries Conservancy will be holding a gravestone cleaning workshop from 9 a.m. to 12 noon at Dale Cemetery. These events are fun opportunities to learn more about local history and give back to the community. Learn more at OssiningHistoricCemeteries.org. Bethany Arts Community has a few interesting events scheduled this weekend. Okay, my house is on fire. Starting on Friday, May 20th at 8 p.m. with Samantha Figgins, works in process showing, which incorporates American Sign Language and gestured movements. I think I actually have to take a break for a second and just make sure my house is not on fire. So talk amongst yourselves. Just give me 1 second, okay?
Angelo, you better go look.
I was waiting for the pager to go off.
Here we got 2 fire chiefs on here.
That's right.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I couldn't ignore my fire alarm with 2 fire chiefs. So sorry about that. Okay, house is not on fire, but something is cooking. So I'm sorry about that in the background. So anyway, Bethany, I think I was up to Samantha Figgins, works in process showing, which incorporates American Sign Language and gestured movements into the performances to illustrate movement as a vehicle for communication. What a beautiful sentiment. Then on Saturday, May 21st, starting at 10 a.m., Bethany will hold its Wood Festival 2022 with crafts, activities, vendors, and more. Wrap up your weekend at Bethany with a performance by the new Rising Sundance Project entitled An Imperial Message, a multidiscipline live arts presentation on Saturday, May 21st at 2 p.m. Register for all of these events at bethanyarts.org. On Saturday, May 21st, Ossining Matters will be back with a movie by Moonlight at Brookside School featuring Ferdinand. Everybody loves Ferdinand. Gates will open at 6 p.m. for a pre-show by Mike Risco Band and get a head start on some yummy eats from Croton Tapsmith Pizza Oven and Bazo D Food Truck, and they are great, both of them. The movie will start at sunset, and Sunday, May 22nd is the rain date. Get your tickets now after you vote at www.austinmatters.org/om-events. Mike Risco Music will be putting on a production of The Lion King Kids Edition at the Briarcliff Manor Pavilion at Law Memorial Park on Sunday, May 22nd at 1 p.m. or 3 p.m. Tickets are free, but reservations are required. Email performances@riscomusic.com to reserve your spot. And that is it. And if I could have a motion to adjourn to work session, unless are there any other announcements from my colleagues? Sorry, I kind of buzzed through that.
Okay. I just wanted to mention that Austin Boat and Canoe Club is always accepting new memberships. You can go to obcc.org, click on membership, or just peruse the website and see if it's for you. Available to anybody. Thank you.
All right. Any other announcements from my colleagues on the board? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion to adjourn to work session, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. All right, so first up on our work session agenda, we have Peter from Radish Health to discuss what their company can offer employers like the town of Ossining. We first learned of this company during COVID when Radish was offering contact tracing and testing services for employers, but we were interested in their general concierge healthcare services, which we feel would offer great benefits to our employees, keeping them healthy and happy in the workplace. Peter, I'm going to turn it over to you to share more information about Radish, and then I will open it up to my board colleagues for questions.
Thank you so much. And thanks guys for making some time to learn about Radish Health today. I promise to be very quick and easygoing here. So I'm just going to be sharing a screen for a moment. And what we did is, my work with Dane and Victoria has been pretty extensive, and we've had a lot of conversations around ways in which to improve the accessibility and also the options that the staff has around mental health and also around primary care. And I think that one of the things that we came to is that any opportunity we have to provide incredible healthcare options to the staff of the town is really important to explore. And they've done an incredible job of vetting this out. So I'm just here to give you, as a short agenda, a high-level understanding of what this is, how it would affect the town, and how it's currently affecting other towns in New York. That's going to take all of like 5.5 minutes, promise. And then we'll have another 5 minutes for questions where our founder and also one of the doctors on the Radish Health platform, Vera, will be able to answer any of the questions that you might have about the nitty-gritty details of what you're seeing. So really super high level. There were 3 core outcomes that we felt were really important to the town, and this circles around this theme that the town is dedicated to the health and well-being of their staff. So first and foremost, just having a healthy staff. And then also offering mental health and nutrition options. So part of the Radish Health platform allows you to access in-network mental health care with therapists very quickly and easily, and the same for nutritionists. And then finally, making things convenient and accessible. So Radish Health is able to take your existing insurance policy that you already have with NISHIP, I believe, and essentially create a concierge service around it, so that instead of that being something that is difficult, oh, I have to wait for a primary care physician 2 weeks in order to get an appointment, etc., you're able to access this through your phone in a very easy and convenient way. To articulate that, I ask you a very simple question, which is simply, what do you guys do when you're sick? Because before Radish Health, my answer was, I just take vitamin C and I pretend that I'm better because I don't want to go through the trouble of having to find a doctor. And sometimes I end up at urgent care if I'm really, really sick. And if I end up at urgent care, the backlash of that is that the insurance premiums can actually increase because urgent care costs more than a primary care visit. So there's that to consider as well. But I was getting a lot of similar answers from the department heads and from Dana and Victoria as far as what do you do when you're sick. It's this, oh, well, I have a PCP, but they're in a different town and sometimes it's hard to get in touch with them. So I either go to urgent care or I wait, and then sometimes I just hope I feel better. We created a story about Timmy, which I will not go into in detail, but as I'm sure you can tell from the graphic, it is convoluted, it is difficult, and God forbid Timmy has high blood pressure and needs to see a specialist, or has diabetes and needs to see a specialist, or has anxiety and wants to see a therapist. Being routed to all of these different areas in your existing insurance policy is convoluted and difficult. So with Radish, what ends up happening is Timmy already has a personal relationship with a doctor that he is able to connect with both virtually and sometimes in person during our on-site clinics that happen right in the office. In addition to that, when he wakes up sick, he's able to connect with this doctor that he has a personal relationship with same day and get treated, and also get scheduled for any additional appointments he might have and have hand-holding and help in that process, so that he's not left to his own devices of finding who's in network. But Dr. Sellers is stepping in and helping Timmy figure out who's in network for his diabetes, for his anxiety, and for his high blood pressure. So that is how, very high level, this concierge service attaches to your existing NISHIP insurance in order to let the entire staff have a more convenient and accessible experience. And just, I put together this executive briefing that can be shared around with you all if you want to get into details. For the sake of time, I can tell you that the highlights here are those 3 core ideas, but a healthy staff that's able to have mental health access. And also, you guys mentioned COVID earlier. This came up because of COVID originally, and it is something that when we hit the winter and we get the winter spikes, which we will have, you'll have security there as well, because it is part of the care package that is this concierge service. So a couple of just key points from social proof from some of your neighbors and peers that are already experiencing this. I know it's maybe a little crazy to just put one quote on a full page, but this is Cassandra, and she works in the town of Babylon as an employee. And I just thought that her experience and what she had to say about it was so impactful that it deserved its own page. So I will read it to you. I am truly grateful for Radish Health. This has been a life-changing experience for me because I'm a single mom with 2 jobs and I have very little time for my own health. So thank you for all you do at Radish, at helping me to take care of my health the way that I need to. So that's what some of the other employees in other towns in New York are experiencing right now. And I've got just a couple of simple case studies. Again, we can expand on this. If you guys are curious, you can hit me up if you have further questions, but this is essentially just a high level of the experience that other towns are having and the success that they've had in having this concierge service. So high level, that's what it is. What questions do you guys have for me or for Viral?
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, Jen.
So I absolutely understand the need for additional mental health services. I saw within my own family, friends, acquaintances everywhere that people were not able to access therapists when they needed it. They were like booked for months and months and months. People were calling people from Psychology Today. They were not available. So I absolutely support any additional mental health, anything that employees can get in a mental health situation. I don't see, beyond accessing therapists and social workers, I don't see the benefit after that. If you can help me understand, that's where I get lost.
Absolutely. So what do you do when you get sick? You wake up and you're feeling ill. What happens next?
Well, like you said, I mean, it depends on the severity.
Okay, it's pretty severe. I should be at the doctor's severe. What happens next?
I call my doctor.
Okay.
And I mean, my personal experience, I have not had a problem getting an appointment with any doctor. You know, you can name a doctor.
Yeah, sure. Do you have a primary care physician?
I do.
Okay, and you have a really good relationship with them?
Yes.
That's awesome. High five through the phone, because you are in like the 10 to 15% of the people that we talk to. The benefit is most of the experiences that we encounter is that folks don't have a primary care physician. They don't have a good relationship with their doctor. They're not building a relationship. Take me, for example. I have a better relationship with my hairdresser than I do with a physician. No one's allowed to touch my hair except for Heather, but I haven't seen the same doctor in the last 20 years before meeting Viral. So I
guess what I want you to say is, can you walk me through what does Radish look like in this situation? I need a doctor. I can't get in touch with my primary. What happens with Radish? Like, I'm not understanding.
Bingo. So you would take out your phone and you would access the chat. Again, there's no copay to this chat. This is just part of the experience. And you would be able to speak to a doctor that's been assigned to you. So let's say it's Dr. Sellers, and Dr. Sellers is going to build a relationship with you so that when your PCP isn't available, Dr. Sellers becomes like your secondary PCP. And in that text, you're going to realize if the severity of what you're feeling can be simply resolved through a text message, or needs to elevate to a virtual checkup, if you will, through telehealth, or needs to be escalated to something that is, we're going to send you to get some blood work done at this Quest facility or something like this. And all of that's going to be monitored through the experience that you have with Dr. Sellers, which at face value, you might be thinking, oh, well, that's sort of like a teledoc or whatever, like that's just like telehealth. But it's not, because the next time you get sick, you're also going to speak to Dr. Sellers. So you're building a relationship with a doctor who knows you and knows your experience and also your history. And now add to that, well, just one moment, add to that the mental health component and the nutritional component, and then it's all in one house. And the COVID component. So if you do go back to it as a town, start to track again from the perspective of it's winter time and we're spiking and we need to be testing and things like that. Who's taken a test, who hasn't taken a test, who's vaccinated, who's not vaccinated, who had symptoms and who didn't, through the entire staff on a dashboard that Victoria has full access to and can tell you the stats of in the moment's notice. Like, the fact that all of that gets to be under one umbrella is where you start to see the value.
Okay. And where is this doctor located? Anywhere, or definitely in New York State?
Viral, if you want to just talk a little bit about the doctors and how they operate, I think that's a good tag in.
We have doctors that are all over, but they're all licensed in New York State. We have doctors that live everywhere from Kentucky to, we have one that actually lives in Paris. But everyone is familiar with New York. There are medical assistants and staff are familiar with where you can get follow-up, and it will never feel like the doctor doesn't know, where to send you next. We really pride ourselves in always having, for example, if you see us as your primary care doctor and you need let's say you need to see a cardiologist afterwards because you need a specialist. We don't just say, go see a cardiologist. We'll actually help book you that appointment with a cardiologist, and our doctor will actually call that cardiologist's office to do that for you. So it's that level of, we truly want to be your first step in your healthcare journey for all things, whether we can take care of it in-house or not. Obviously, primary care doctors have limitations to what they can do, and that plus the therapist can do a pretty decent amount of stuff, but there's going to be other things that you may need if you're sick or if you have complex medical conditions. We oversee all of that and make sure that you're taken care of on that front as well.
And Victoria, just to be clear, this is only for full-time town of Austining employees, right?
Correct. That's how we have it structured right now, or at least what we've requested them to prepare as a proposals for our full-time employees.
And when will we find out cost factors?
I think we already have it prepared. So I think it actually would be helpful if you could go through, Peter, with sort of the general scope of what we've talked about in terms of pricing and the pilot program. I think that would be helpful for the board to understand what sort of terms we're talking in here.
Sure, happy to do that. So the pricing for small governments is set up like this, where if you're just taking the COVID component, it's going to be $10 per person per month. The basic contains the mental health accessibility, the COVID accessibility, and the primary care and the nutrition at $15 per person per month. And then the premium adds the unlimited on-site clinics for $18 per person per month. And what we've prepared at this point is essentially a pilot for 6 months to get you up to your fiscal year, because I know that your budget is a Jan 1 budget. So we discounted that because it's coming out of discretionary funds and the budget year is already done. So we wanted to make sure that you guys could get started on this and have your employees start to experience it without having a huge financial impact. And then after that, it works like SaaS, and the annual starting in Jan 1, if it was budgeted for, would be as follows. So that's what it looks like there. And also as a disclaimer, because I'm sure someone in the room is thinking of it as a concern, we did add an opt-out clause just in case the town's unable to continue service, or you find in the 6-month period that adoption has been so brutally terrible that you wouldn't want to continue, which I can't imagine happening. You do have that opt-out clause, but the idea here is that you would ramp up into a full subscription over the course of your 6-month pilot, and the employees would have all of the benefits that we discussed.
And where are the on-site centers?
They come directly to your office.
Oh, okay.
So we would set it up.
So like the doctors would come set up at the office, and now like instead of department head, A having to figure out where their doctor is or when they're going to go do their visit because they're not as diligent as you are, they just go down the hall and get seen and get their blood work done, of COVID vaccination, a flu shot, et cetera, whatever it is.
Does that include psychiatrists and psychologists or social workers?
Sorry, I was on mute. Our therapist is a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. We do consult with psychiatrists if we have complex medical needs, and then our physician will prescribe the medication for you. So,
do those people come? Is that offered in the on-site service that the mental health support?
The on-site service is specifically primary care.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do just want to note, as Peter talked about at the beginning, we have had quite a few conversations. We did also invite a number of our town staff to participate in some of the conversations. So we had some, staff members ask questions and ask, similar questions to what we're hearing from the board. It definitely sounds like it's something that people are interested in. There are, yes, we do have some people who have very good relationships with their primary care doctors who may not necessarily take advantage of this, but we were hearing from some of our employees that this is something that they need some assistance assistance with, whether it be the mental health services or the primary care services. And so that's why we asked, that it be prepared as sort of a pilot program so that, we can see how it goes and see how much the town staff really takes advantage of it, and, how much it might benefit our staff. But it seems like this might be a good fit for a lot of people who work for the town. And if we find that it's just not necessary, we can reconsider as part of the 2023 budgeting process.
One last question. Peter mentioned that the money comes out of the discretionary fund, so that means the employees are not paying for this as they do their health insurance?
No, the town would be paying for it. It's just not something that we necessarily discuss as part of the 2022 budget process. So, it's coming out of sort of our operating budget, not necessarily someplace that we've, aligned it saying, okay, this is going to pay for Radish Health, because we, didn't really have these discussions in the last fall when we were developing the budget. But, given the price, and it's separated out into the different funds, depending on where if the employee works in the highway department, parks department, so on and so forth. So, it's a relatively low cost spread out across the budget to sort of see how much this might benefit our staff.
Okay, thank you.
And one of the other things that they had shared with us from Radish is that in like self-insured or other places, they're seeing savings on the back end of insurance. And because we're in NISHIP and it's a huge pool, it's not going to impact the huge pool, obviously, to any great extent, unless, we get the whole state on it. But, ultimately that's because preventative care and being able to have access to care quickly, is most likely gonna result in better health outcomes. So that's, I think, what we see as the benefit for the town, is having better health outcomes, having staff, able to come to work every day and have easy access to a doctor who can give them an answer quickly about what they might need to do. And in some cases, again, the one example is you wake up sick, but you could wake up with a bump on your head or something else, right? And you need to, either find out, do I need an exam for this? Like, is this something that I really should worry about, or isn't it? And at that point, to have access to a doctor, I think we can all agree is like kind of going to make you feel a little better than just searching around on the internet trying to figure out, well, what is this symptom? Oh, I think I'm, on death row here because
Dr. Google.
Exactly, Dr.
Google.
So I think that, I guess that's one of the other benefits that we see. And it seems, again, that the idea that concierge service, that it seems like it's something that's more, kind of comes to you more easily, like looks at you, at your whole picture, and can tap into what it is that you might need quickly, seems to be of benefit. Councilman Feldman?
All right, so I have some questions also. So how does this differ from United Healthcare's nurse coordinator service that they provide? And, I unfortunately have had some health concerns, and I keep getting phone calls and texts and letters about, will you please join our nurse coordinator health services that, that will be here for you. We'll make sure you get visits. And, it sounds like a similar program that United Healthcare already has. And I know that United Healthcare also has phone numbers for virtual visits, immediate virtual visits as well. So how does your program differ from that?
The relationship. So when you call that nurse coordinator line, you're not assigned one nurse. And you also then, mentioned there's you're not always getting the same person. And then the other aspect there is there is an ability for you to get to a doctor, but that's also that's a different person. So the nurse can't prescribe you medication. They're coordinating your overall care. They're not actually providing you the care. Whereas in our case, we actually are the providers that can take care of anything you need. And you're talking to a doctor always first. So, you can take your app out, wake up in the morning. Oh, I think I had a tick bite. Do I need to get prophylaxis for Lyme? I send a picture of the fact that I have maybe a little bit of a rash and a tick bite, and I get medication called in for me with no appointment need to be made, no extra time out of your schedule. You're doing it while you're walking on your way to work. So it's that level of service. So I think it's just a higher level of service. I think those nurse lines are useful. Insurance companies have created them to decrease their cost of care, but we're just a higher and better level service. I guess that's the best way to put it.
I will just add, because I have used that service recently, I do believe that they assign you one nurse. It's not multiple nurses. So just so you know, it is one person, but it is a nurse versus a doctor. So, you know, I've spoken with them twice, and I'm not sure. They're still out.
I used to work at Oscar, and I oversaw those systems, and there was a lot of turnover. So yes, technically you are assigned one nurse, but there's always moving from one group to the other is what we saw a lot. And it was the biggest complaint amongst patients and their experience. But again, I think the better thing is here that you get a doctor that's assigned to you, not just a nurse. It's a whole team.
Okay, I personally.
Also to add real quick on that point, just to piggyback for just a brief moment, I think it's important to note that there are a lot of similar, like from the outside looking in, it might seem the same kind of services, like you mentioned, that some of the larger insurance companies are doing. And then I always kind of get concerned about utilization, because we're a small boutique company whose whole purpose is to create this concierge service. And these larger insurance companies are using these concierge ideas as add-ons to support their centerpiece, but their centerpiece is designed only to take the money and not deliver the care unless absolutely necessary. Whereas, like, we don't survive unless we get you to use the service, the concierge service, and activate with it and engage with it and get the use that we're expecting out of it. So what is the utilization is always like a big question for us. And that's something that's super important, as far as, like, we want the utilization to be very high. And one of the things that we noted and I know that I went through it very quickly, so you wouldn't have possibly been able to read this, but that we noted in some of the other experiences we had, like in Babylon, New York, for the workers in the municipality that were enrolled in Radish Health, 80% of them were using it on a daily basis.
Yeah, what are they doing on a daily basis? I gotta know that.
That's really impactful. A lot of it was COVID check-in, but some of it is like daily maintenance of mental health. Some people are using it for nutrition every day. Some people are, you know, hypochondriacs. There's a lot of different reasons, but I think that it's important to note that the utilization there is a big part of the conversation that sometimes gets overlooked. That's all. I'm sorry, Councilman Sunderland.
And I'll say, to be fair, I think that a lot of that with the daily check-ins for COVID caused our utilization to be close to 100% for quite some time, because that was a mandatory aspect of our platform. But even now, a full 1/3 of Babylon employees, and actually not just Babylon, all of our town's employees have actually used us for medical care in various ways, whether it be for a mental health service or a quick text to get a medication refill, or seeing us for an annual physical and switching over to us fully. So at least 1 out of 3 people are seeing problems finding and accessing a doctor to the point where they're using us. And even people that have a good doctor have switched, because there's a reason why urgent cares exist, because a lot of people are having trouble getting to their primary care doctor and it's not convenient. You don't want to have to take a half day off to go see your doctor, or, you know, quarter day off. You can call us and we can take care of you from the comfort of your home. So that's why we're slowly seeing more and more people use this every day because of the convenience.
So you're saying if I need a blood pressure medication refill, that you would call that in for me without checking my blood pressure?
It depends on your story. So this happens all the time. You've been on the same blood pressure medication. We have people, this happens all the time.
Yeah,
for 5 years. And nothing's changed. And that medication should be called in. Commonly, if you have high blood pressure, you should be seeing your doctor once a year if it's stable. A lot of doctors make you come in more often to do that refill. We don't require that. We want to take care of you as a person, not just make you come in all the time. So absolutely, if it's something that makes sense, we always call it in.
Okay, but let's say I wanted you to check my blood pressure. How would that come?
We actually can ship a cuff to you. And that's no additional cost to you. The cuffs comes to you overnight. You put it on. It's actually connected to the cell towers, and it'll tell us what your blood pressure was.
Okay. All right, so there's no on-site place. I mean, you'll come to the department head's place like once a year or once?
It depends on utilization. So for the town of Babylon, we go every other week because they're a much larger organization. And a lot of people use the service. For the town of Austin, obviously us coming every other week is probably not useful unless everyone is very, very sick, which would be unfortunate. So we'd probably come, twice a year or once a year for the annual checkups.
Okay, and you provide annual checkups
Correct.
for just the employee or their family as well?
I believe in our proposal, we had just included for the employees. If it's something you want to extend to dependents as well, it's something that we're happy to discuss or extend to them as well.
So right now, I mean, I think we were really looking, just to try this out. I don't think that we're necessarily think we know that this is going to work for us, but we thought it was something that has the potential. It's a new model for healthcare that could appeal to some of our younger staff and may help them maintain their health for the purpose of serving the public. So, it isn't a lot of money between now and the end of the year to try it. So, we may not get everything answered until we do, just to say, I think that's one of the questions. So Councilwoman Fields Tuiel.
I was just thinking, in terms of utilization, who monitors that? Our office or you do? So like at the end of the 6 months, in terms of we want to see what is the utilization rate for our employees, are you monitoring and reporting that? Or is that something we do?
We send quarterly reports on overall utilization to, usually it's HR, personnel office, whoever you deem to get that. And obviously we can't tell you who got care and what type of care they received due to patient privacy. And that's the same reason you wouldn't be able to monitor it, because you'd have to ask employees how many people used it, and you can't ask that. So we can just give you basic numbers on how many visits occurred. And we do breakdown of like mental health versus physical, and then video versus asynchronous, which is like chat message visits. So.
All right, that's cool. So in a 6 month time, you would probably send that utilization report twice, maybe?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
The reports are automated. We used to send them once a month and people got annoyed. So we started doing it once a quarter. So we look at it weekly. So if you want it all the time, we can send you the same copy. It's not a problem for us, but exactly. Yeah. Most people don't want it that often.
Yeah, no, I was just curious. Yeah. Thank you.
Of course.
Any questions from any of the other trustees, board members? Thinking about school board. Anybody? Council members? Board? No? Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Well, fantastic. We thank you so much for that presentation. I don't know if the board wants to further discuss. If anybody has any points?
Thank you so much. We'll leave you guys to it and let you guys discuss internally. I just appreciate the time that you shared and excited to potentially offer even more opportunities to create a healthy life in Ossining.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Bye, guys.
Okay. Next up, it is going to the bond market season around here in the town of Ossining. And we recently met internally with our department heads who are here tonight, or at least
one. I think we've lost a couple department heads in the.
Okay. Are we going to get them back? Are they coming back?
I am not sure what's going on, but we'll get started, and perhaps Councilman Minicchio can assist on the park side.
All right. So let's see what we had. We were expecting, at least we had our highway and cemetery superintendent, Pete Conley, who is still here, I might add. We were expecting our recreation superintendent, Bill Garrison. I guess he was here. And our parks foreman, Mario Velardo. We have our amazing finance team of Dale Brennan and Liz Nakari, our comptroller, deputy comptroller, to refine our priority capital projects for 2022. And we're looking for the requests to the town board for the bond resolutions and the capital projects resolution. So I think I'm going to turn it over to Victoria, unless she just muted herself. She just went away.
All right, I'm here.
To walk us through the requests that'll be for the board, and then hopefully our department heads, if they ever come back, can answer any questions or give a little background as to why these particular requests are their priority projects at this point in time.
Okay.
Over to you.
Yes. So I'm going to share my screen. This was circulated to the board on Friday. And again, so I'll just preface this by saying, you know, in the budget process, we go through establishing our 5-year capital plan. And we often kind of think of that as a wish list that we're looking for opportunities for in terms of funding, whether it be coming from going out to bond or paying out of our fund balance or perhaps grant applications down the line. And so as the year goes along, we kind of have to review that list, refine it, see what makes sense for us to accomplish as the year goes along. And so here we are with requests that have come from that capital plan that was adopted by the town board with the 2022 budget, and sort of refined into the couple of items that we'd like to request the board of the board to move forward on. So for the first couple of resolutions that we'd like to request the board have on its meeting next week is for a couple of capital projects that would be paid for out of fund balance from cemetery fund, highway fund, and the general fund. So for cemetery, we're looking at a utility vehicle that needs to be replaced that we'd like to purchase, a leaf machine for the highway department, which is the machine that sucks the leaves off the roads, and Pete can describe that in a little bit more detail. And in the Parks Department, an excavator. And I think the idea with this excavator is that the new excavator would go to Parks, and the old excavator at Parks would be passed down to the cemetery because it's still in relatively good shape and can be used. So that's a little bit of a 2-for-1 deal on those and that piece of equipment. Then for sort of the larger cost items, we are requesting that the board adopt bond resolutions so that we can borrow for the costs of these, larger pieces of equipment and larger projects. For the highway department, it would be for a new Packer truck, 2 Freightliner dump trucks. And again, part of the reason why we're requesting this now is, there's a little bit of a wait time on getting equipment right now. So, if we borrow for it now and get the orders placed and purchase orders issued, it'll probably be quite some time before we get them. But, you need to plan now. If we need trucks, we need to think about it now. And for the Parks Department, also a new dump truck with a plow and spreader. And then in the parks, the major project that we want to move forward with this spring, we've been hearing from the Rec Advisory Board for, we had actually hoped to do this last year, but couldn't really pull it off, is to replace the fencing at the ball fields at Ryder Park. It really is not in good shape. Like I said, it's been identified now for the 2nd year that needs to be get done. It is a little bit of a liability issue because of, protecting vehicles and people that are on the other side of those fences. And so that project is going to be $420,000. And so we would include that in the bond and hopefully get that project underway soon. So I don't know if Pete has anything to add, or again, Councilman Minichio, I know you worked with our parks foreman on developing the proposal for the fencing at Ryder Park. Yeah, that's what we're looking at this year. Or at least right now. There might be more come down the line in terms of other projects from fund balance.
And are there specific questions that my board colleagues have?
I do have one. I don't know if Pete wants to answer this. Under the request for bond resolutions, you have a Packer truck and then 2 dump trucks. What is the use of the Packer truck?
The Packer truck goes out every Friday for yard waste, picks up bag leaves, organics. The current truck is was 1993, so it's almost 30 years old. And sometimes around this this time of year it goes out Thursday afternoons. We try to cut it down because there's so much yard waste out there with people cleaning up after the winter. So that's about what it's used for, at least 1 day a week.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
You want to just talk about the dump trucks too while you're at it?
Sure. So the two Freightliner dump trucks, they're going to replace vehicles that are built in 1997 and 2002. Their main purpose is, I would say, snow removal. They can also be used for, the rest of the year. With today's body, you just slip a plate in and you can use them for blacktop, hauling dirt, whatever other, gravel, whatever other projects you have. So like Victoria mentioned, these trucks, if ordered today, are at least a year and a half out. So that would make the 97 and the 2002 even older. Gary, when he was here, and Chuck, they're keeping them on the road, but I think it's getting time to have them replaced, especially for snow removal. The leaf machine, if you want me to continue on the leaf machine, we have 3 leaf machines. They use about 10 weeks out of the year. One is a spare. So, we have 2 crews. One starts in one end of town, the other in another end of town. And the third one is a spare. But, the oldest one now is 20 years old. And so I'm just thinking that's getting very close to its useful life.
You want to talk about the potential of getting an electric packer truck?
We could look into it if you have another $300,000. I know
there's actually subsidies for that now.
Maybe, but I'm just looking for a new fire engine instead of 700. They come in 1.1, but they still have a diesel engine in them, for backup. But that would be the fire service. At the cemetery, the Victoria had mentioned the Bobcat utility vehicle. I call that the workhorse of the cemetery operation. That's used almost every day over there. It's small enough to go between the monuments. It dumps. We use that for interments. We use it to bring the guys around. We use it when they're trimming, when they're doing monument foundations. It's almost being used almost every day. So that is getting very old. I think when Sue Donnelly was supervisor, she purchased that about 6-7 years ago. So that one is getting close to the graveyard also. So it's about where we stand.
And also, I'll just say, because I know we have 2 new board members, what we also do, when we get these new vehicles, is the vehicles that we have, we put out for auction, declare a surplus and auction. So, or perhaps graduate to another department, like in the case of the excavator. So there are opportunities where we do make a little bit of money on the back end there when we dispose of vehicles.
Right. And I think we have Mary in the waiting room, maybe?
I do not see Mario in the waiting room.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing so we can just.
I do actually think that getting the vehicles that we need and are going to need in the next couple of years, bonding for them now while the rates are low, is a good idea. So. But I'm sure Dale or Liz can speak to that.
All right. Would you like to?
Sure. Good evening, Town Board, Town Supervisor. Yes, the rates have increased twice so far. They're projecting to increase another 2 or potentially 3 times this year, depending. Right now, I'm projecting out to the point that we will actually go to borrow because this bond resolution, if approved at the next meeting, there's 30 days for permissive referendum and then another 25 days for estoppel. We normally renew our bans in the beginning of August, so the timing will work out perfectly. The rates are currently at about 3.75% right now for interest. I'm thinking by the time we get to August, we're going to be around 4.25% for interest on the bands. So for the $200,000 for the Freightliner Packer truck and the $600,000 for the two Freightliner dump trucks. So this is the highway fund debt service. I'm projecting out an annual payment of about $82,000 on that debt. And then for the parks dump truck and the ball field fencing, which is $630,000, I'm projecting out a bond payment of $65,000. So those numbers will be worked into our 2023 budget, because that will be the first year those payments will be due. So that's my positive thinking.
Over how many years?
These have a 15-year life. So while we'll borrow for the short term, unless, depending, we could do a bond as well. As we get closer, I'll do more projections to figure out which is more cost efficient. But all of these items actually have a 15-year life. So when these bond resolutions come to you, hopefully next week, there will be one bond resolution that is just for the equipment. So that bond resolution will be $1,010,000. And then the other bond resolution will just be for the fencing, and that will be for $420,000. But all of these items as a pool, either way, have a 15-year useful life.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mary, do you want to talk about the two, I believe it is, what the excavator and the utility vehicle, is that right?
The
No,
excavator and the other dump truck
the other dump truck.
with plow.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I was waiting. I was in the wrong meeting. I guess that was fun. Yeah. So the excavator, Pete and I discussed. The cemetery is actually due for a cemetery, an excavator. So we agreed that we would hand the one we have down to them now, which would be a bigger, more powerful machine than what they have. And then we would get the new machine, and we would get a one size bigger than what we have now, just because the stuff we're doing is just getting bigger and bigger. As far as the dump truck, it would be another hook lift truck, but on the smaller size. The reason for that is it would be able to share the bodies we have now for our other hook lift truck. So we will be asking for a flatbed with it, an electric spreader, and an electric plow, because those items are cheaper than the hydraulics. And it would work the same as the one we have now, the hook lift. Just the hook lift we have now doesn't plow because it doesn't have 4-wheel drive. But this one is smaller. It's like the F550s that Pete has. And I don't know, the hook lift for us has been working. It's a great piece of equipment. It's probably one of the greatest things we've ever gotten in the parks. It's just a truck that it's not tied up to one body. You could switch bodies, and now we could even use the two other ones we have. So, and that's that.
Any
So
questions?
we'll be ordering it with a flatbed body or no extra body?
No, with a flatbed. With a flatbed.
Okay, so we don't have a flatbed for a hook truck currently.
No, and then the flatbed will be able to be used on both trucks.
Okay. All right, and this one's smaller, so.
Any other questions, comments? Jumping up and down for joy? All right, thank you. All right, so I think is that it for this discussion. Victoria, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. So we'll just have resolutions next week to set up these capital projects, approve the bond resolutions, and get moving on these projects.
Do we have a
Fantastic.
bidder on the fencing?
I'm sorry.
We have a bidder on the fencing?
We have there is a company that is through one of the purchasing consortiums that we're a part of that has given us a proposal, so we won't have to go out to bid for it because it's already sort of been competitively priced. So the price that we have on there is the real price of the fencing. So you know, we'll be basically ready to go once we pass those benchmarks that Dale spoke about, the permissive referendum and the estoppel period, and then we'll be able to cut the purchase order and schedule that project for some time in the next couple of months.
Thank you.
Okay. So with that, thank you to our comptroller and deputy comptroller and to our parks foreman, and have a great night. Next up, we're going to ask Pete Connolly to stay on for a little longer for his departmental report.
Good night, everyone.
Okay. Bye, Mayor. All right, everybody. On the highway side, since my last report, it's been a while. We completed roadside vacuuming of leaves in December, and last fall we had purchased our own road line striping machine, and we completed that town-wide in-house last fall, so we didn't have to go out and pay an outside vendor. Phase 1 of the Morningside Drive drainage, curb, and repaving project was completed in November. Got a little too cold, and we worried that we wouldn't get a good job, so we put that off. And speaking with our contractor, we anticipate, finishing paving of Morningside Drive and Morningside Court sometime in June, hopefully the first couple of weeks in June. McCarthy Drive improvement project is expected to be completed by the first week in July, weather permitting. There was a lot of scheduling construction issues with Con Ed Electric over the winter months, and hopefully they're all resolved now. So
Hopefully, but not quite. Okay.
yes, boy, that was rough. The department responded, speaking of the winter, to about 10 ice and snow events since January. We did use or ordered 600 tons of road salt. And once the weather broke, we put our spreaders and plows away in about the third week of April. And again, since better weather came out, we have restarted roadside sweeping with our sweeper, and our weekly organic yard waste pickup. Now that winter has passed, that's usually every Friday. Drainage work and new concrete curbing was completed on a portion of Stonegate Road. And this will eliminate some water runoff that was causing icing conditions there in the winter months. Also, drainage work, stormwater drainage work was completed on Russo Lane, Cedar Lane, 43 and 69 Morningside Drive, and White Way. And the crews are currently working on a drainage project at Cedar Lane and White Birch Drive. Hopefully that'll be wrapped up in about a week. And we have some others to do this summer months. We have been responding to winter-related potholes on town roads, but most of our complaints that we received are on roads in the town, which are maintained by New York State DOT, and we just refer them to the pothole hotline number. We have been making permanent repairs to the roads and sidewalks, which were excavated by the Ossining Water Department due to water main breaks over the winter months. Our 11 sewage stations continue to be serviced by our own personnel, and also our outside pump repair vendor once a month. So they get looked at twice a month. For some personnel news here, Alicia Santucci was permanently appointed office assistant in December. Alicia works for us in the highway department, the parks department, and also at Dale Cemetery. Our chief mechanic, Gary Cesari, retired on January 26th after about 17 years with the town. So working alongside of Our other mechanic, Chuck Boughton, now, we welcomed Alan Sanchez, who started his employment with the town as a mechanic on February 14th. So on the Dale Cemetery side, last year there were 88 interments we had. To date, we have 23. And we generated 68 new plot deeds in 2021. Our cemetery and parks crew continue to perform their regular duties.
Pete, you're muted.
That happened. Our cemetery and parks crew continue to perform their regular duties of maintaining Dale and Sparta cemeteries. Besides interments, they work on grass cutting and trimming, fall leaf cleanup, snow removal. We install the concrete monument foundations before they're installed, minor tree work, shrub trimming, flower planting, and as the headstones fall down, either by vandalism or themselves, actually, we reset them. The town also received an award from the Westchester Municipal Planning Federation for the historic preservation and restoration of the Dale Cemetery's Superintendent's Cottage last year. So that was a nice award to get. And that outside work really needed it. That's all I have.
And did you redo the tile in the front hall of there as well?
The tile is done in the front hall, and we're still working on, we're going to reset the file cabinets in the wall to make more room. So that's in the process of being done. So that's like, it's a busy time of year for us now. So maybe, rainy days or something like that, we get back inside.
Sounds good. Fantastic. You guys have done a lot of work. Councilman Fields, do you have a question?
Yeah, so Pete, I'm a newbie, so I'm just going to ask you, I have no idea, where is the Sparta Cemetery? I know where Dale is.
Yeah, Sparta is at the end of Revolutionary Road, where it almost comes out onto Route 9. If you go behind the Arcadian Shopping Center, past Kemmy's Cove. Yeah. I'd say it's about 2 acres. Goes back to the, I think, Revolutionary War era. And
Otherman is very
okay.
Yeah. In my 8 years.
The other question I have is,
Yep. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. The other question I have is, do you think Dale Cemetery is going to be available or open to, how would you call it? Dana would probably know better than I do. More environmentally friendly burial choices. So for instance,
it's called green burials.
There you go. Yeah. Do you know if that's ever going to be an option there?
It could be an option. I mean, there's space available. Be honest with you, I heard good and bad. I mean, you're supposed to let the grass grow naturally, and then one of the complaints we get, when they come to visit their relatives or loved ones, they can't find the grave any longer. So that's one of the drawbacks. But I guess there's no monuments. You're just buried in a shroud and away you go. So
I'm familiar with a type that a tree is involved. So that's the monument.
I don't know how many trees you could put in a row. The grave sites are only 42 inches wide. So that would, I don't see that. I don't know how that's done, to tell you the truth. Yeah. We can look into it, but there is space available.
We have looked into it a little bit. We started investigating with Sleepy Hollow Cemetery because they do have that option, and it is becoming more and more popular. We actually looked to see if there was a piece of the cemetery that we could sort of devote to it, but it turned out that it was really owned by the school district, and so we just didn't get that far. We had a couple of different things going on at the same time, but it is certainly on my mind, and we can continue to investigate and get back to the board with some options.
Yeah, we could talk more about it another time. And the other question I have, Pete, again, this is my ignorance. In the winter, right? That's when all the potholes come, or in the winter or after winter, we see the result of whatever happened during the winter. Do you think that sometimes, do you think that sometimes the plows could possibly be, lifting up asphalt, and that could, result in the beginning of a pothole, and then there's wear and tear? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just curious, like, how can we, because I have to tell you, and I see this in Sandy Galiff's office, we get calls and emails all the time about the roads, particularly in Ossining, Town and Village. And I'm just curious, how can we somehow proactively try to lessen them, if it's even possible?
Right. I think it goes a lot to a maintenance issue. If whoever is responsible for that roadway sometimes is not taking care of proper drainage, and the water gets underneath the road base, and then it gets cold and it starts to freeze. And so I think that's a big cycle right there. As far as the plow, unless you really had a roadway that was lifted by frost, I guess a plow could pick it up sometimes, or a temporary patch that was put in a month before, but usually no. But
Okay.
I think there's a whole system that has to be looked at, or roadways got to be maintained by some other departments, and I think that's a lot of the problem. Water getting underneath the roadway.
What do you
All
mean
right, I'll
other departments? Are you just saying by the state or the county? Is that what you mean?
I think most of the damage on Dale Avenue, and which is in the village, but I see
That's a lot of that is
134.
Con Ed. A lot of that is Con Ed right now.
Oh, what right now? And I think why Con Ed is there, I think the state has finally got to pave Dale Avenue. I don't know that for sure, but you want to take care of put new utilities in first. So, I mean, 134, 133 is all chopped up, and
It looks like Beirut right now.
Very horrible. Right, and again, those are state roads. Those are both state roads, and it's
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
well,
have you gotten any update from the state as to if they're planning to come out and take care of those from Sandy's office? Jen?
No, but that's going to be actually something that our office is going to be addressing after session. So I'm going to want to speak to Pete again regarding that, because we can't just, we can't let it continue. And we've all heard in other meetings with state DOT what their issues are, but I don't want to comment further.
You just got a letter. Didn't you just get a letter, Pete, about something? Was that, am I right?
Yeah,
there's some money available for pothole New York or something
Yeah.
like.
It was not, it was not a very large amount of money.
No, about $8,000. I think it was $8,000 or something like that. But I would like to do a follow-up to our meeting in April that we had with all those state officials about some of our issues, because they did say they may be coming in the end of May and beginning of June. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Pete from the board? All right, well, thank you for that comprehensive update, departmental report. Okay, so I think we're done with you, Pete. If you want, you may have a lovely night, rest of your night. Next up, have a great night. Thank you. Last week, the town board adopted our new comprehensive plan with sustainability elements, and we asked our town planner, Valerie Monastra, to join us this evening to discuss sort of broad brushstrokes, some of the next steps to bringing this plan to life for the town of Austin. We're not going to get into nitty-gritty details. I think we're just going to sort of talk about concepts for moving forward. So I will turn it over to you.
All right, great. Thank you. First of all, congratulations, because that was a pretty big achievement. And, especially since you went through COVID and you came out the other side with, a fully adopted comprehensive plan, pretty much, with just for the most part within the timeframes originally established, just a little bit over. So the next steps, as as Dana mentioned, is the implementation of, your comprehensive plan. So one of the elements, so there's a number of different elements associated with that. And some of it will deal with like different grant projects you might pursue. Other elements might deal with certain policies that you might end up adopting, as well as other town-wide projects. But I'm here tonight to really focus on the next steps in terms of zoning regulations. So what I'd like to do is start moving forward with what we're calling the zoning code updates, dealing with housekeeping items. These deals with like definitions, site plan review procedures, updating your lighting requirements, landscaping, some of your special permit requirements, basically modernizing your zoning code to reflect the overall goals and policies that you would want to, incorporate as a result of the comprehensive plan. But then also there's a number of things that have changed even within like the last time you did a zoning update, which was like pretty much like 2015. There have been things that have come to pass that the code should be modernized. So the other thing that we'd like to start focusing on is North State road zoning. So if you recall, PACE, you received a grant, well, actually PACE received a grant in partnership with the town of Austining to focus on updating the North State road zoning. We do have some initial assessments based upon like best practices from PACE. And what we'd like to do is now take those concepts and start really incorporating those into the North State road and to get feedback as to what elements you want to include. And these really focus on like design criteria, complete street components, also some uses. So these are things that you're going to want to look at next. And then the third component is really your cannabis regulations. This is something that is clearly coming down the pike. It's something that needs to be addressed. I know Christy has been updating the board throughout the process. So there's still a lot of stuff unknown, but some of the decisions that this board's going to have to make at some point is where do you want your regulations, distances from education centers, any sort of additional regulations, and that will clearly work closely with Christy on those as well. So, I mean, those are the three big areas that I'd like to start moving forward with. And one of the things that I suggested to Dana was that maybe we should consider forming like a committee, bringing in some representatives from your different land use boards, potentially a business owner, maybe a residence along North State Road, and then as well as a couple town board members. This isn't necessarily meant so that it would be like monthly meetings or additional meetings, but somebody, as we go through and develop drafts, that we have a committee to review those drafts, provide input, and then also go back to the respective boards and get input as well on those drafts. So that's where we'd like to start moving forward, and wanted to take any questions that this board has, and then maybe also get your feedback as to your thoughts on the next steps.
I'll open it up to my colleagues on the town board for your comments. And thank you so much, Valerie, for that. Again, I think just to review again, we're talking about cannabis, we're talking about North State Road, and we're talking about a lot of housekeeping items that would sort of bring us into the 21st century, even though some of those were done in the 21st century. So any thoughts, comments? This sounds like it makes sense.
Newbie again. When you say implementation, what does that look like? And what is our job as the board look like? What are we going to be doing?
So in terms of implementation for zoning, what basically is going to mean is that I will be drafting along with, feedback from your different land use boards as well as the town board, basically updating your zoning code, bringing you drafts for you to review, and then ultimately the town board will need to vote on those zoning changes.
It would have to be done as a local law. There would have to be amendments to the existing zoning code or additions to the existing zoning code, and that's only something that this board can do.
And while we're talking in very generalities tonight, if the board decides to let's start moving forward with this, I'll come back with like specific areas within the zoning code that are looking to update, what you're looking to update. And then, so it's a little bit of definitely a process, right? I'm not just gonna disappear and then come back with like zoning updates for you to review and adopt. It will be, we'll systematically move through the process.
I think a good kind of analogy on a smaller scale is what we did with the balloon release local law, right? So the board had a conversation. I drafted a draft law. The board reviewed it at a work session. I revised it to incorporate your comments. We did that a couple of times. And then it goes to public hearing, as any local law would. And the public will have an opportunity to comment. Then, you know, if there are additional changes that have to be made, but this would obviously be on a much larger scale. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but that's kind of the process that it would go through. And there would certainly be multiple rounds of town board input.
Right, and that's why we were suggesting maybe developing a little bit of a committee. So there's some of that vetting ahead of time before it comes back to this board. So, and then I think you'll find that, you know, when we start dealing with things like definitions, they're not, a lot of it's just updating like to more common, you know, definitions, as well as if there's new case law that requires definitions to be modified, we'll just modify those as well.
Okay. Are we going to be following a similar path as the village with the cannabis regulations and zoning? With the
So-
public hearings and the,
That is up to you, how you want to proceed. My first thought in terms of, before we even get there, is just sort of providing you basically a list of options that you're going to want to consider, or things that you're going to want to think about. And then we can talk about what concerns you the most. Like, so for example, you know, in terms of distances between educational resources, I developed a really quick map. I mean, I can even show you, and this is like a good example of things that you're going to need to consider. So like, for example, we did a quick map earlier this year because Dana had a quick question about, in terms of if the cannabis regulations were going to be permitted along your general business district along North State Road, and you were to create a 500-foot buffer from any educational facility, what you'll find is that there's only a handful of properties that this use could go into along your North State Road in your general business district. So this is just an example of things that you'll be looking at and then making determinations on. Do you want to do, you know, for example, a distance or a buffer from childcare facilities, or do you not want to do that? You know, and what's that buffer distance? You know, is it 500 feet? Is it 200 feet? So these are the things that, you know, some of the decisions you'll need to make. And then also in terms of, you know, hours of operation, and some of the stuff might be out of our control. And that's where Christy has been looking at things very carefully. So some of it is still unknown at this point. And so we'll probably take our time with this particular regulation just because of the fact that there are so many unknowns.
Yeah, so there was the law itself. And then at the state level, there's the Office of Cannabis Management and the Cannabis Control Board that are going to be implementing the regulations that kind of get into the at a more granular level as to how this is going to operate in practice. And that hasn't happened yet. So, you know, we could start looking at it on a bigger picture. And obviously we do want to have these regulations in place if and when there is a potential operator who wants to come into the town. But it's kind of difficult to do that without having those regulations. Another thing, just to piggyback off of what Valerie was saying, is that, you know, you can consider buffers and additional restrictions on locations, but it can effectively result in an outzoning of the use. Right. You can't make the zoning restrictions so specific that effectively no property in the town can comply with it. Yeah.
I have a question. First of all, Valerie, is it possible you can send a copy of that map you just showed?
Oh, sure.
To the board? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other question is, and this is, I really directed more for Christy and Dana. Are we going to pass any regulations of how many establishments will be in the town? Is that something that is?
Are we allowed to do that? I'm 100% sure.
I don't know if that's been discussed before my arrival. And I don't know.
We really haven't this is the start of the conversation.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Like, we had conversations last year in the context of whether the town was going to opt out of these uses
Right.
with respect to the on-site consumption and the retail sales, because we had a deadline of December 31st, 2021 in order to implement them. Otherwise, we lost that opportunity. So we talked about it on a much higher level than what we're dealing with now, which is the actual zoning. You know, it's possible that we could have some sort of buffer that says, you know, you can't have 2 retail establishments within X number of feet of each other. That may be a way to do it, but you know, and those are all really the types of things that we do have to try to walk a fine line so that we're not really so that we're not crossing the line of outzoning or making it too onerous. The other thing, and you know, I guess when we'll start to see how this really plays out in practice, is that my understanding is, you know, it's going to be a pretty lengthy process to get these permits and licenses at the state level, and I think that they really are going to want to try to distribute them throughout the state. And you know, specifically, I think this is supposed to. I think 50% of the licenses are supposed to go to minority owners. So, you know, the likelihood, and I'm not saying this couldn't happen, that 3 different properties on North State Road could all get licenses, it is probably relatively unlikely.
Right. And I think in addition, you know, we'll probably start with, you know, your zoning districts that have retail as a permitted use, right? Because that's, in effect, if you did absolutely nothing, technically it's a retail use. So we'll probably start there, and then we'll start, you know, I'll identify the different issues that you might want to consider or things that you might want to take under consideration. And then we will develop, you know, zoning text associated with the decisions that you make throughout, you know, the conversation. And then if you want to have some public meetings to get public feedback on, you know, some of the things that you're thinking about, that we can absolutely set that up and arrange that. That's not a problem.
But that would absolutely have to happen at some point before a local law could be adopted. You're required to hold public hearings.
Right.
Any other questions? All right.
Okay.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. That was great.
So you'll be hearing from me again shortly. And again, like when I come back, we'll start identifying the different areas of the zoning code that we're going to focus on, as well as provide you a little bit more information on North State Road. And we'll kind of, like I said, we'll go through it bit by bit, but ultimately at the end, I would think it's probably going to take less than a year. You'll have updated zoning.
Fantastic.
And if we need to move faster on the cannabis, we can. We don't necessarily have to move everything at the same time.
Right. And we may have to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That's great. Thanks, Valerie. So with that, may I have a motion to adjourn to executive session for advice of counsel and contracts?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you so much for joining us. Next week, we will continue in our all Zoom format, as I believe the executive order was extended through June 14th, maybe, correct? Is that right? June 14th-ish, with a legislative session on Tuesday, May 24th. Have a wonderful week, everybody, and we'll see you around. And you have 2 minutes left to vote. Okay, have a good night.